Hi, my name's Jack and welcome to another Kit Guru review. In today's video I'm taking a look at the ThermalTake Argent H5 RGB wireless gaming headset, and this retails for £142.99 here in the UK. It offers quite a few interesting features like DTS Headphone X version 2 surround sound, 40mm high-res drivers, game chat balance modes, and customizable RGB. In this video I'll be giving my thoughts on the design, comfort, sound quality, and I'll be doing a microphone test. So let's take a closer look. Starting with the unboxing, the Argent H5 comes in a fairly standard box that gives you all the info you need to know about the product. ThermalTake has chosen to highlight game chat balance, high-res audio and DTS support, all of which are pretty great features. Opening the box up, you're first presented with the headset, which has the ThermalTake logo debossed into the top of the headband. Inside you get a warranty booklet and installation guide, then you get this rectangular box. Opening this up, you'll find the USB-C to 3.5mm cable. This isn't braided. This cable is for connecting the headset to a console or laptop, for example. You also get a USB Type A to Type C cable. This is for charging. A USB extension cable. This is for bringing the dongle closer to the headset to improve wireless performance. There's also a bendable, detachable, bidirectional microphone. And finally, the USB dongle, which uses 2.4 GHz wireless connectivity. So taking a look at the overall design of the Argent H5 RGB, it's fairly minimalist with a matte black finish, which I think looks great, although it can pick up marks quite easily. Logos and branding are fairly minimal as well. You have the ThermalTake logo debossed into the headband. The headband also has this stitching detail on each side, which I think looks great and gives the headset a more premium feel. You also have the ThermalTake logo mark on each ear cup, and this illuminates with the RGB lighting turned on. Now the RGB on this headset looks great, it's bright and vivid. Each ear cup has an illuminated border as well as that logo, and the colour is fully customizable in the software with over 16.8 million colours to choose from. My one big gripe though is that you can't cycle through the RGB modes or change the colour from a button on the headset itself. You have to install the software to make any changes. Now each ear cup has a number of different functions. On the left ear cup you'll find the volume control, power button, USB Type-C port for charging, and the 3.5mm port for the detachable microphone. The microphone included is bidirectional and it's bendable, which is great if you want to move it closer to your mouth. There's also this small light strip at the end of the microphone, which unfortunately doesn't sync with the RGB on the ear cups, but does light up red if you use the mic mute button, so you know when your microphone is muted. And here's a quick sound test.
Okay, so this is how the microphone sounds in wired mode. So I wanted to show you guys both examples in wired and wireless because I think there is actually a slight difference, and we'll come to that when I do the wireless test. So the first thing I noticed straight away about this microphone is that overall the quality isn't the best, and compared to other microphones I've tested built into headsets so far on the Kit Guru channel, this one is definitely sort of bottom of the list in terms of quality. I wouldn't really recommend using this microphone for any kind of professional reason or for streaming or anything like that, and I would look at getting an external microphone. So now I'll put the headset in wireless mode and see how the microphone sounds. Okay, so this is how the microphone sounds in wireless mode, and personally I think this sounds even worse than the wired mode. I don't think this microphone sounds good in either situation, and like I said in the last clip, I really wouldn't rely on this microphone for any kind of professional work, and to be honest, even anything like Zoom or Skype, I just don't think this headset's going to give you great results in terms of the microphone. There's also one feature that I think should be sorted out with firmware updates if possible, and that's the fact that after 60 seconds, this headset will go into sleep mode. Now that's great for saving battery life, but if you're not listening to anything and you're just using the microphone, it will cut off after 60 seconds. And as you can see, that happened just then. Now the only way to fix that is to then play a sound through your computer, whether or not that's a Windows notification, an email popping up, music, whatever it is, that will kind of kickstart the headset again. But that's a really annoying feature, because what if I want to just use the microphone for something and not be listening to anything? It's just going to cut off after 60 seconds every single time. Personally, I think ThermalTake should be putting something into the software to fix this, because it is definitely not an ideal feature.
Listening back to these clips, it's pretty clear that this microphone isn't going to be used for anything serious. But one thing that is odd to me is the fact that when you're in wireless mode, the audio has this sort of limiter, or at least in the recording, if you look at Adobe Audition, you can see that the audio clips off, even though the audio isn't actually clipping when I'm speaking into the microphone. I'm not really sure why it's doing that. I guess it probably is just like a noise gate or something like that. We can rule out this microphone for anything serious. It definitely isn't the best. Now, I want to highlight one microphone that I think was very good in a headset I reviewed recently, and that's in the Corsair HS65 surround sound. So let's take a look at a clip from that review, and you can see the difference is night and day between these two microphones. Okay, so here is the audio from the microphone on the Corsair HS65 surround. I honestly think that this is a fantastic microphone, especially considering that there's no pop filter like a foam filter here on it. It really cuts out plosives well, so you can barely hear any plosives at all. It's really easy to bend around, so you can move it closer to your mouth to make it sound even clearer, and obviously you have that flip to mute feature. So in all, I mean, this is a really good microphone. On the right ear cup, you get two combo buttons. The top button switches the headset to 7.1 DTS mode when pressed, although you need the software installed for this. If you hold the button, the headset will display the battery life via the RGB lights. The button underneath this one will mute your microphone when pressed. If held, you can enable the game chat balance. To get this set up correctly, you'll need to set your audio output to chat sound Argent H5 wireless RGB in your chat software. So for me, this is Discord. Now once that's done, hold the game chat balance button down for 5 seconds and you'll hear a sound indicator. Then just use the volume buttons on the left ear cup to increase or decrease game chat or voice chat. Now I think this is a great feature to have, especially as you can change game volume on the fly without having to tab out and go into Windows Volume Mixer. I will say though that the buttons on the ear cups don't feel that good. They feel quite cheap and plasticky, and because they're matte, which is the same texture as the ear cup itself, it can be quite hard to actually identify the button on the ear cup and know which one to press. And most of the Argent H5 RGB is made of plastic, which is fine, but there is a slightly cheap feel to it, especially considering the $142.99 price point. And in spite of this mostly plastic build, which would usually lead to a lightweight headset, the Argent H5 isn't actually that light. It weighs around 400 grams, give or take, which is substantially heavier than my Sennheiser 599s, which weigh around 250 grams, and it's definitely a noticeable difference. When it comes to comfort, the headband and ear cups have memory foam padding covered in a leatherette material, and there's plenty of cushioning. The ear cups have both lateral and vertical rotation, which will adjust your head shape and should improve comfort. They also fold in, making the Argent H5 RGB portable. Unfortunately, there is one big issue with this headset, and that's the fact that it's just too big for my head. So when I put it on, the top of the ear cups actually rests on the top of my ears, and after literally 5 seconds, this causes quite a lot of discomfort. For those of you who do have larger heads, the headband does have 15 steps of adjustment, which should be more than enough for most people. There is also a decent amount of flex on this headset, which should improve overall comfort. But again, personally for me, I couldn't wear these for long durations at all without the top of my ears starting to ache. And in the 10 months that I've been reviewing here on Kit Guru, none of the other headsets that I've tried so far have had this problem. So the Argent H5 RGB supports a 2.4 GHz wireless connection via the supplied dongle with a range of up to 10 meters, although this will vary depending on your environment. And from my tests, this seems about right, but for most people, you're going to be up to around 2 meters at most away from the receiver, and if you need to, you can always use the included extension cable. Now I love wireless headsets, the fact that you can play games without a cable snagging if you decide to move a certain way. But one issue I did have with this was that once turned on, it did take a little bit of time to sort of configure itself and actually start working. Most wireless headsets I've tried before, as soon as they're powered on, they connect and you can start listening to music and play your games. But with this, there was a slight delay to the point where I wondered if the headset was even working. Battery life so far has been fairly impressive. You should get around 10 hours of use if you have the RGB lighting on, and up to 19 hours with lighting off, and that's with the volume at around 50%. Now from my tests, this does seem about right, and with volume at 100%, the headset lasted 2 days for me, playing games and listening to music, and that was with the RGB lighting off. I do wish that there was a button on the headset that would turn the RGB off. Unfortunately, there isn't, so you will need to download the software to actually turn the RGB lighting off to improve battery life. However, once you've done that, you can uninstall the software and the headset will remember your settings. The headset does have two built-in power-saving modes. After 60 seconds, the headset will go into sleep, and after 30 minutes, it will turn off entirely, which is great for preserving battery life. So the most important thing about any headset is the sound quality, so let's talk about that. So the Argent H5 RGB features 40mm high-res drivers with a frequency range from 20 to 40 kHz. However, you only get this frequency range in wired mode, which is a bit of a letdown for a wireless headset. Overall, I found the headset sound to be okay, nothing spectacular, especially when compared to my Sennheiser 599s, which are my daily drivers. I found that the Argent H5 RGB sound was a little bit hollow, almost sounded like listening to music or games or whatever it is you're listening to through a tin can. This actually made hearing the positions of enemies quite difficult because everything sounded really muffled before it actually reached my ears. Now, whenever I review a headset, one thing I tend to do is listen to an orchestral playlist on Spotify, and that gives me an idea of the frequency range and how well the mids, highs, and lows are actually represented on the headset. And I have to say I was really disappointed with this. So I listened to Danny Elfman's Spider-Man soundtrack, and basically what I would do is I would listen to a track on this headset and then listen to it on my Sennheiser 599s. And there was a massive difference. Everything through the ThermalTake Argent H5 sounded a bit muddy, and I couldn't really sort of distinguish the different instruments or anything like that. It just sounded like everything was merged together. However, when I listened to the exact same track on the Sennheiser 599s, you could really hear each different instrument and the kind of, it just sounded so much more, I don't know, the word I could best describe it is the Sennheisers have a lot more oomph, whereas the Argent H5 just sounds a bit dull. I already said earlier that it's almost like listening to sound through a tin can, and I think that's the best way to describe it. Now, there are some options to tweak the sound if you want to. You can enable DTS Headphone X version 2 surround sound, which is meant to be slightly better than Virtual 7.1, and you can also choose between some custom EQ presets in the software. And I must admit that I struggled to find any EQ preset that made this headset sound any better. Most of them, if not all of them, made the headset sound worse. And as for the Virtual 7.1 surround sound, if you've watched any headset reviews I've done in the past, you'll know that I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't think it works most of the time. Sure, it can make the soundstage sound a little bit wider, but usually it actually makes it harder to distinguish certain footsteps and noises when you want to hear the enemy team. And ThermalTake markets this feature with the sentence, "Hearing your surroundings clearly can be the difference between victory and defeat." This, in my opinion, is complete marketing nonsense. I get on just fine without a fancy gaming headset, and if anything, I actually play better without one. In fact, just as an example, when I was playing PUBG with a friend and I was using the ThermalTake Argent H5 RGB, I was really struggling to even hear where a car was coming from, to the point where I actually had to ask him, where is that car coming from? Because to me it just sounded like it was coming from every single direction. And then as soon as I switched to my Sennheiser 599s, I didn't have this issue at all. And when you consider the price of this headset at £142.99, I find it really hard to recommend over some of the headsets I've already reviewed on the channel, including the Corsair HS65 surround sound or the more expensive Razer Kraken V3 Pro. Both of these have much better and more immersive sound. Before I conclude this review, let's take a look at the software and how you can customize your headset. So when you first open up ThermalTake software, you will be on the lighting tab. Firstly, from the top left, you can go through all of your different profiles, and obviously you've got 6 here that you can assign different RGB effects, different speaker settings, and then you can switch through your profiles as you like. But just starting off with profile 1, this is the first thing you'll see. Again, you can select your profiles, even though you can do that from the top, but here you can delete them, duplicate them, export, import, and so on. Then you have your effects. Now I have this on RGB spectrum at the moment. You can control speed, brightness, and then you have static, pulse, and blink options as well. And for static, you can choose whatever color you like. So for example, I can go for like a red here with a single zone, or blue, whatever color you like really. Then you have pulse, and you get a nice little preview here of what this actually does, which is quite nice. You can see here, this is what a pulse would look like if you had it on. And then finally blink, which is a bit more of aggressive pulse. I'm not really a fan of this one, but there you have it. You have 4 different RGB modes. But as I said, for each of these you can customize speed, zones, and things like that as well, which is quite nice. So next we have our speaker settings, and from here you can mute the speaker entirely and adjust the maximum volume. Then you also have your sample rates from 44.1 kHz to 96 kHz, and you can change between 16-bit and 24-bit. Next you have your mic settings. Again, you can increase and decrease the volume or mute the microphone entirely. And then you have your sample rates, 44.1 kHz to 48 kHz. Next you have your DTS settings, and these are currently enabled, although I wouldn't advise using these personally, but you may like the settings that you get here. There's a ton of different things. You can uncheck and check spatial options. You've got stream effects, so virtualization, loudness control, dialogue enhancement. You've got your mode effect, so bass, which adds extra bass, headphone EQ. You've got your entertainment, game, and sports rooms, which kind of emulate if you're in a different space. Stereo preference, front, wide, or traditional. Again, I find all of these just make the audio sound worse than it did before, so I tend to leave this off. To use the equalizer, you do need DTS enabled. So once you have enabled DTS, you can go into your equalizer and go through all of your different settings. You have 4 defaults, like this. And the idea of that is that you can customize each of these individually, and then you'll have 4 different custom settings. Then you have FPS, MMORPG, ARPG, and RTS, and these are all 4 different settings which are supposed to enhance that type of gameplay. I did try some of these. I tried FPS on PUBG, and if anything, again, it just sounded worse. I'm not a big fan of these equalizer settings and DTS and all these digital enhancements. I do think it tends to make audio sound less clear, but you might like some of these, so it's great that they're included. And that's pretty much it for ThermalTake software. So what do I think about the ThermalTake Argent H5 RGB wireless headset? Well, unfortunately, I just couldn't get past the fact that this headset's just too big for my head, leading to quite a bit of discomfort. And there's not much that I could do to make this feel any better. Now, besides that, the sound quality isn't that great, especially for the £142.99 price point, and I had issues placing enemies and the sound overall was a bit hollow. So on those points alone, the lack of comfort and the hollow sound quality, I really don't think I can recommend this headset, especially as there's others I've reviewed on this channel that are better, particularly the Corsair HS65 Surround. I was really impressed with that headset, and it is much cheaper. And that's it for my review. If you've enjoyed this, be sure to leave a like, it really helps out the Kit Guru channel. If you want to see more from us, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell icon as well, and you'll be notified when we upload another video. You can also support us on Patreon to unlock some exclusive content, and if you want to check out one of these t-shirts, the merch links are in the description. My name's Jack, you've been watching Kit Guru, and I'll see you in the next one.